Hi, I'm Dustin Abbott, and welcome to the second part of the review of the new Tamron 150 to 600 millimeter f5 to 6.3 DI VC USD, and this is the G2, or the second generation of that lens, because its name did not have enough acronyms before. In our first episode, our first half of this review, we looked at the overall handling and upgrades to the build and the design. A lot of good stuff that we covered as a part of that, and discovered that a lot of the things that people didn't like about the first version have been addressed in the second generation of the lens. And so I was really pleased. I enjoyed using this lens in the field more so than I did the first one, and it just felt like less cumbersome. It felt like I was better able to accomplish what I wanted to with the lens. And so that's a really positive step in the right direction. We also looked a little bit at the focus quality of that as a part of that review and its compatibility with the tapping console. And so if you missed that, you can find that link to that right here. And I encourage you to take a look at that. In this second half of the review today, we're really going to focus more on the image quality, the maximum magnification, the bokeh quality, looking at all of those things to see if there have been some real improvements beneath that pretty new shell on the G2. So we're going to jump in and we're going to look at some real photos, some real examples, and see what we come to. I found the minimum focus distance a bit confining on the G1 of the lens. It was right under 9 feet, and while that doesn't seem very large, I just found that there were situations where I wanted to be able to focus closer than what I could. And so that's definitely also been improved in the G2 version. Instead of that 8.9 feet, which comes out to 2.7 meters, the minimum focus distance on this is 7.2 feet, or 2.2 meters. And so they've shaved off nearly 2 feet, and so it allows you to focus closer. And as a result, you also get a bump in maximum magnification. Now, optically, it is a refreshed optical formula, and that certainly bears out when I've done some side-by-side testing. There is one additional element in the optical formula of this lens. The version 1 was 20 elements, 13 groups. This one is 21 elements and 13 groups. Particularly, I'm looking at the long end. You know, the truth of the matter is that this lens was really pretty good between 150 and 500 millimeters, and then between 500 and 600 millimeters there was a drop-off in optical performance. And so I particularly looked at the 600 millimeter end because that's really what I wanted to see if there was a growth there. And let me just say on that note, some people are put off by the f6.3 maximum aperture on the long end, and they say, well, my camera only autofocuses at f5.6. The reality is that all of these Sigma or Tamron lenses that have a maximum aperture of f6.3 all autofocus on any camera body that they're available in a mount for. There's a little bit of electronic trickery there that allows them to autofocus perfectly. So you don't need to be put off by that. I also found that the new version, while they both have 9 aperture blades, the new version emphasizes that they are rounded aperture blades. And I would say that the bokeh quality compared side by side is noticeably better. It's softer, less hard edges show up from the version 2. So that's also a plus. You're going to get nicer looking images overall, I would say, from this lens. Though I will say that I still prefer the bokeh quality from the Canon 100 to 400L Mark II that I shoot with a lot, even with the teleconverter. I think it's just a little bit softer, and I like it a little bit better. But there certainly is an improvement when it comes to that. So first of all here, looking at, you can see that there is definitely more light transmission, and while the light was changing somewhat, I saw enough of a pattern to believe that there is better light transmission with the first version of the lens, the A011, and that probably has to do with that extra element that's been introduced. But I think the trade-off is probably worth it because, as you can see, put side by side, there certainly is better resolution on the right side for the G2 version of the lens. And as you see in this leaf, along the textures here, you're just seeing much more detail and contrast showing up, a little bit more haziness along these edges, and you can see that they are much more precisely rendered over here and towards this corner. Just overall, I'm seeing a better detail in the G2 version of the lens. And so, I mean, really that's what this was all about. People wanted to see improved image quality at 600 millimeters, and I think that's what we've gotten. And on top of that, if you look towards the out of focus region, you'll see that there is more kind of creaminess and softness here in the G2 version of the lens, and less hard edges that are showing up. And so I think that the trade-off is also you get a little bit improved bokeh quality as well. Now, even stop down to f8, you can see the difference in the light transmission. There's still more light getting through, but I think that the end result is you're getting a richer, more nuanced image. So here's another example. We'll look more towards the center quality, but then also towards the edges of the frame. And so I shot this tree trunk mostly because it just gives you a whole lot of texture information. And so as you can see, there is definitely more contrast in the new lens, and thus the textures, there's more resolution in them on the G2 version, which is on the left. And so I just see a notable difference, and as we get closer to the edge of the frame, I think that that difference is becoming more pronounced. And so I think you've seen a very even performance as we move down here towards the bottom, very bottom of the frame, while it's gotten weaker on the version 1. And so I think that there is a more consistent performance here from the G2, even as you move towards the edges of the frame, that it is just, it's delivering a stronger performance basically wherever you look in the frame. Now the difference in rendering is very clear here in this shot. The color difference it's completely different here when we compare on the right side, which is the version 1 with the G2 version. I would say you're seeing, if you look like in these corners, that there is probably a little bit more vignette on the new version. And definitely, again, you can see the difference in the light transmission, although I will note the lighting had changed a bit, even though it's just a few minutes apart. Another thing I want you to note is just how much softer the bokeh region is here compared to the other. And so that's really the main focus here. These leaves were moving around, and they're not, precisely focused at the exact same spots. But so we're not going to see so much about sharpness here, but I wanted to give you a look at the overall rendering, color rendition, and then also the bokeh. It's quite surprising to me how much different the signature of each of these lenses is. So I noted that Tamron significantly improved the minimum focus distance and thus the maximum magnification. And so this gives you an idea of what minimum focus looks like on the first version and then what it looks like on the G2 version. And so you can see that the framing is much tighter, and as a result you're getting much more magnification of the image by comparison. Now that plays out in the real world by these flowers. They look large in the frame, but they're actually little tiny flowers that are left at this point in the year. And so you see them in nice magnification there. Also in this shot, this is shot in a little bit more controlled environment, so I got better sharpness from it. But this is a single leaf that's pretty much filling the frame, and I stopped down to f11 because the depth of field is tiny at that minimum focus distance. It literally is just a couple of millimeters, and so if you want to have anything really in focus, you do need to stop down. So you're going to need a good amount of light and some stability. But if you stop down a bit, this is f11, you can see the depth of field is still quite small. But at the same time, you can see that there's very nice detail there at 600 millimeters, and that's certainly a very useful feature. Now, as far as the overall resolution, this is a handheld shot that I took at the Toronto Zoo, and I just do want to add to this. I think that although this looks, this looks pretty fantastic, I do want to note that because I met up with the Tamron representative right before getting the lens, I didn't have a chance to calibrate autofocus on the 5D Mark IV body I was shooting on. That being said, it looks pretty fantastic here. So you can see this is 500 millimeters, lots and lots of resolution. So when you nail in focus and get this calibrated on your body, you should be able to get really sharp end results. And for contrast, I wanted to show a 600 millimeter shot. And once again, while I would say that the resolution isn't quite as high as that 500 millimeters, it's still obviously very, very sharp. And as you can tell, that's a significant amount of difference in framing between 500 millimeters and 600 millimeters. And either way, I would say there's lots of texture in that for a nice sharp image. The tracking performance is certainly better with the new version, and of course you have more options with how you use the VC. Again, this was shot with the lens not calibrated, but still I feel like I was able to track well, and this shot is pretty much nailed. I think you could probably get a little bit more sharpness out of it with a properly calibrated lens, but considering this was I was tracking in AF servo, bird in flight, and this is ISO 2500 here, and so there is a little bit of grain noise there, but overall I think for bird in flight that's pretty well focused, considering I am no pro at BIF type work. This is another shot just to show the very nice color rendition that's possible. You can see the raindrops falling here on the left side of the frame, but beautiful color rendition. Finally, I want to do more of a quick comparison to show, okay, here's the moon, and this is at 600 millimeters. So some people kind of opined with the last version that you would be better off shooting at 500 millimeters and cropping. I don't really think that's the case anymore. Here, for example, is a 500 millimeter shot. Both of these are at f11, and so the difference between them, you can see the difference in magnification, but the difference in sharpness, particularly when we look at where you can see more detail rendered, I don't know that there is a massive difference there anymore. So overall, I think you're getting a pretty decent optical performance out of this lens that I think vaults it up into consideration at 600 millimeters right there with the Sigma Sport. So as you can see, there certainly is some optical gains. I wouldn't say that it's, it's anything like revolutionary, but the truth of the matter is that the distance between the version 1 and the Sigma competitors was really fairly minute, and so I think that Tamron has managed to close the gap and provides image quality that is just as good, if not better, and also a feature list that puts it really near at the top of the league while retaining a reasonably light for the lens itself. It's reasonably light and not all that onerous to shoot with. And so I think Tamron has done a good job with this lens, and I would say in my estimation that having used all 4 of these kind of competitors now, while the G2 version comes in more expensive than the G1, it's $10.99 and this is coming in at $13.99, so that also makes it more expensive than the Sigma contemporary version. But I think you're getting a lens that really is more of a true competitor to the Sigma Sport lens in a lot of ways, and thus it's really more of a competitor also to the Canon or Nikon first-party lenses that it's competing with when it comes to its build and its kind of premium feel, but then also with its image quality and handling performance. I think that there really is enough improvement to where out of the 4 variants available of the 150 to 600 millimeters, I would say that this is probably my favorite of the bunch. It has fewer compromises. You're getting kind of enough of everything to make it kind of the lead the lead lens in that group, in my opinion. I'll be taking a closer look at this. I only have both these lenses for a week, and so I'm going to have to send them back today. And so I've spent some time with them and tried to get a good sense of comparing them side by side and to get a sense of using this lens. I'm going to get a copy back later on, and I will try to then compare more to the Canon and perhaps even one of the Sigma competitors at that point. And so stay tuned, and we'll come back to that in the future. I'm Dustin Abbott, and if you haven't already, you can follow me on social media. Down below, I've got an image gallery going, and I'll also throw a link there to my written review that has a lot more direct comparison and image samples as a part of it. There's also be a link there if you'd like to purchase the lens or maybe get a cotton carrier harness system like I talked about last time for carrying it around. And of course, if you haven't already, please subscribe. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.